was looking at my
Lodge.
calendar. See, okay.
Yep. 6th, 7th, and 8th at Coach Burt's Lodge. And what we've done is this is going to be a really cool opportunity, guys. Just a little bit of feedback or a background itinerary wise on the boot camp. We're doing a Friday, Saturday, and a Sunday. So I've got Coach Burt speaking on Friday. What we're going to do for dinner Friday, we're catering dinner in, and then we're going to do breakouts for dinner. It'll be myself, Coach Burt, Anthony Trucks, and then Nate. We'll be there, and Kristen, our entire team will be there. So what we're going to do during the dinner time, something Coach Burt did at his last event I was at that I absolutely loved, was we actually are going to do breakouts. So I'll be doing a breakout during dinner. We'll be doing 2 30-minute breakouts. We're going to cater dinner in. So we'll be done about 5:30, I think, that day on Friday night. Dinner's getting catered in. We're going to do dinner, and then we'll have separate breakout areas for you or your team, if you've got a team or small groups of people, to come do dinner with me, to come do dinner with Coach Burt, to come do dinner with, and I'm going to pair Nate and Christian together, and Nate and Christian are going to talk about marketing and sales for your company and for your business. And so you'll be able to sit down in a group of about 5 to 6 people for about 30 minutes with one of the 3 of us. And then for the second 30 minutes, we're going to rotate you into whoever else you want to do. Saturday, we're going to do very similar. Saturday, we're at the price of admission. We're doing Chick-fil-A biscuits on Saturday. So if you hadn't had Chick-fil-A, number one, it tastes like Jesus in your mouth. I'll just say that to you real quick. And so Chick-fil-A biscuits are the bomb. So, but for lunch on Saturday, y'all are nodding your head at me. For lunch on Saturday, we're going to cater lunch in as well on Saturday. And on Saturday, we're going to do the same thing. So I'll have a group. Anthony Trucks will be there. Anthony will be doing a small group. We'll do 2 30-minute sessions, and then Kristen and Nate will be together again on Saturday. And then we'll have 2 opportunities throughout the GSD Code Bootcamp for Q&A. So it's going to be, let me say a bad use of words. It's going to be a phenomenal opportunity for you guys for yourself and for your team to be able to come literally and get some one-on-one time with myself, with Coach Burt, with Anthony, and with Nate, and with Kristen. It's going to be a phenomenal time. So what I want to do, I want to go ahead and jump in tonight. I want to tackle fear tonight. And I want to share with you guys, I'm going to kick it off with a little story about myself. So many of you guys know, out of the past 25 years, I've spent about half of that time in full-time vocational ministry. Part of that, so what does that mean, Ken? That means I got paid to pastor. Like that was my job. I got paid to be in full-time ministry. Part of that was in youth ministry. And I grew a youth ministry from about 5 kids to about 350, 400 kids every week. It was one of the top youth ministries in the country. I was afforded the opportunity to be able to travel and speak and do a lot of really, really cool things. Well, one time I'll tell you a story. My youth group was small. I hadn't really got it yet. Probably had 25, 30 kids. And we went to Gatlinburg, Tennessee, on a youth trip. Rented a cabin, had a girls' cabin, guy cabin, and we went like on a youth retreat. And so, you go to youth retreat, you go have fun. We're gonna do all kinds of like youth group stuff and praise and worship and prayer and teach and all that kind of stuff. But then there's times where we're going to go ride go-karts, we're going to go tubing, and we're going to go. I had the bright idea of going bungee jumping. Okay, bungee jumping. Has anybody ever been to Gatlinburg, Tennessee, or even know what it looks like? Gatlinburg, show of hands. Come on, give me hands. Okay, so I'm gonna picture this for you. So Gatlinburg is in the Appalachian Mountains, however you pronounce it. So it's like in the beautiful Smoky Mountains, gorgeous. So Gatlinburg and Pigeon Forge each consist of it's just one like 6-lane road. Start with Gatlinburg, you go through Gatlinburg, and it's just Dollywood. It's all these really cool, eclectic kind of country kind of places, fantastic restaurants. When you go through Gatlinburg and get into Pigeon Forge, it's like they've got the go-kart tracks. It's like going to the beach when you go like down the Miracle Mile, like on the Gulf Coast in Panama City or something like that.
It's the Redneck Circus.
That's exactly right. So they got go-karts, bungee jumping, all the carnivals, the Ferris wheels, that little thing where they put you in a cage and they shoot you up in the air and you spin, all that kind of stuff, right? So I had this great, fantastic idea to go bungee jumping. I'm like, dude, who wants to go bungee jumping? Oh, man, let's go bungee jumping. So I took like 25, 30 kids to go bungee jumping, right? Well, I forgot I was afraid of heights. So So what happens is I've got all these kids that are like, hey, we're going to go bungee jumping. Pastor Kenny, you going? Oh, I'm in, dude. I'm bungee jumping. Let's do it. So we walk up this, stairs. I think that bungee was 140 or 150 feet in the air. So what they do if you've never bungee jumped before is, in the little cage area, they strap you in, they do all the stuff. And then you've got, this big foam thing you can either hang on to. Some of the guys just, they just jump. They go 3, 2, 1 bungee, and you're supposed to jump. So I'm the last one, I'm monitoring my kids. They're all jumping. Everybody's jumping. Well, I'm the last one to get up, right? It's like a Saturday afternoon in Pigeon Forge. There are thousands of people. And I mean, it's bumper to bumper traffic, old car shows. People are walking down the sidewalk. Well, they strap me up. I walk out and I step on that little platform that's like 2 foot by 2 foot. And I look down and I look out and I can see all of Pigeon Forge. And I ain't gonna lie, dude, my butthole got about that big around. It was like, there ain't no way in the world I'm jumping. Like, it sounded good until I got 100 and some odd feet in the air. And dude, you're talking about fear gripping a man's heart. I was terrified. So, Ken, how long did you stand up there? They said 3, 2, 1 bungee for 13 minutes. And finally, the young girl that was up there looked at me and she said, sir, you're either going to have to jump or you're going to have to walk down because we've got a very long line behind you now. I'm terrified. Like my hands are sweating right now thinking about that. That's how terrified I was to bungee. And I'm like, my kids, there's 30 kids standing at the bottom screaming at me like scripture. You can do all things through Jesus who gives you strength. They're like, and I'm like, I ain't jumping. And I'm looking down. People on the sidewalk had stopped to watch whether or not I was going to jump. I mean, I got a crowd of a few hundred people. There's no way I'm walking down. Like, my man card would have been revoked for the rest of my life. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, I got to jump. I'm scared to absolute death. And I'm sitting there, and then here's what I do. She goes, okay, I'm going to say 3, 2, 1 bungee, and then I want you to jump. And I told myself, when she says 3, I'm jumping. She said 3. Dude, I was squeezing that plastic whatever thing is tight, and I jumped. And I'm telling you, I thought for about 10 seconds, I was absolutely going to die. I've jumped and I'm doing it. And then I'm bouncing. I'm like, woo. And then I'm all of a sudden like, man, this ain't bad. So I get done. They lowered me down on the thing and I walked over and I'm like, dude, that was awesome. The guy was like, well, you want to do it again? You can do it for free. And I walked right back up the stairs. They let me cut in the front of the line, put me on, except this time when she said 3, 2, 1, I went, woo. And I just jumped out head first. And I mean, dude, I was just flying through the air. And it was one of the funnest things I've ever done. Would I do it now? Hell no. Not in a million years would I do it again. But what happened is I was able to overcome that fear. I mean, literally that fear had me gripped. And we talked last week, there's really only 2 types of fear that we're born with. We're born with a fear of loud noises, and we're born with a fear of falling. Those are the 2 fears that we're born with. So those things are in our DNA. It's not something that when you're born with a baby, if you notice something falls or breaks or a dish breaks, a baby will wake up cold out of sleep and just start bawling because of a fear of loud noises. And also a fear of falling is the other one that we're born with. So what that tells us is, we talked about this last week, is every other fear that we have is what? It's learned. It's a learned fear. So if we can learn a fear, then we can do what? We can unlearn a fear. So as we get started tonight, I just want to touch real quick on mindset and limited belief systems. We talked about these 2 things a little bit last week, and we're going to hit these 2 definitions every single week for the next 6 months. Mindset is an established set of attitudes held by somebody. It's a way of thinking, a settled way of thinking or believing in something. So that's mindset. Dude, it's a pattern. It is stuck we are fixated. Like we can't get out of that way of thinking unless we work on it, which is what we're going to do over the next 8 weeks. And what is a limited belief system? A limited belief system is a belief system that limits you from believing or seeing what is impossible for you or what you allow in your life. The definition of limited belief system is this: limited belief systems restrict the scope of how you can show up for your life. They keep, this definition is so powerful. They keep you from seeing what's truly possible. They keep you from seeing what's truly possible. So one of the things I asked on the GSD Facebook page today was, hey, come with a win from this week. But what I want to do is I want to open the floor for a couple minutes, and I want to talk about fear. I want to talk about, what is your number one fear? Like, what's the thing that you're afraid of the most? Somebody go.
For me right now.
Yep. Who spoke first right there?
I think it was me.
James, go ahead, buddy. And then we'll catch the next one.
Right now, my my biggest fear is with wholesaling, because I'm so green to it. And I've tried to start businesses before, like different network marketing, like an Amazon course, that once I got to the point of like investing money in actual products and calling like manufacturers and stuff, I just like shut down. So for me, like with the wholesaling, it's the fear of the unknown, of the lack of knowledge that I have and the lack of experience, and getting caught in that and essentially looking like an idiot, or just not knowing what to do, or just, you know what I mean? Just kind of breaking down from having no experience in that, you know what I mean? But I know that that's the vehicle that I'm going to use to get to, to give myself freedom and set myself up to the next step. I was talking to Christian about this. Like right now, I've made the most I've ever made in a month is $15,000. And that was before I was a father, and I could like spend 60, 80 hours at the store, and I could do whatever I want. And, now it's different. So for me, like the next step is getting to a point to where I'm making like 20, 30 consistently, you know what I mean? And then it's like 50, 60. So for me, I know it's that vehicle that I need to make that next step. I just don't know the mechanics of it. You know what I mean?
Right. Mm-hmm. Nate, you want to talk about that a little bit and what he just talked about as far as that fear?
At what level? Like, where do you want me to speak into, bro? Just like, what do you want to speak into? What part of it? Because it's kind of layered.
Yeah. So I would hit, and so is talk about is you're doing what you're doing right now on the phone sales side, and there had to have been a time in the phone sales side where you weren't as confident in doing what you were doing, and there was a learning and a progression there to be able to do that. Nate, that give you some good runway?
Yeah. I think number one, just no fear is false evidence appearing real. So I think a lot of times you feel maybe a skill set that you may or may not have. It's really, all fear really is false evidence appearing real. So whether it's an insecurity you may have, lack of experience, the lack of know-how, lack of, understanding, like typically when you're actually doing a task or you're trying to accomplish something based on like, I'm trying to make these calls to get this amount of sales. Usually what happens is the fact fear is like, I don't have the skill set to accomplish this. You just have to realize that that's false evidence appearing real. And I would tell you this, fear has killed way more dreams than failure ever will. Fear has killed way more dreams than failure ever will. And so I just want to encourage you in that aspect of fear. And I deal with the same thing, man. It's like when you step out and do something new, or you step out and do something that, territory you've never walked in, fear will always present itself. But, I think part of what you have to realize is, you've already said it, courage, and Plato said it this way: courage is knowing what to fear. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, courage is knowing what to fear. And the reality is your fear isn't being able to accomplish the objectives. Your fear is actually being able to fulfill the task and having the skill set and the daily discipline to attain your certain goal. Does that make sense? Yeah,
that's perfect. And I would piggyback on that too, James. And I would say this to you and the rest of the crew. I would say this, that whatever level you're on, you're going to hit another level where you're going to experience that same fear again. because you're going to a different level that you haven't been before. And you're always going to be, and you should always be uncomfortable, and then recognize that specific fear, that fear of failure specifically is what we're talking about. James, and I would say this, probably even, I think the number one fear that psychologists say we have is the fear of rejection or the fear of criticism. So I think there may be even a little bit of part of that in there as well. Somebody else, who was the other person? Somebody else spoke.
It was me, Kenny. It was me. It was Grassi.
Go ahead, Nate. Go ahead. Nate wants to finish that thought.
I think part of fear is like this. It's like the elephant in the room, right? And we're all embarrassed. And my greatest fear is that I actually admit that I have fear. Does that make sense? My greatest fear is that I'm vulnerable to other people in my life, that I do have fear of failing my kids, fear of, failing friends in my life, fear of failing my family name, all these fears. So part of it is like, just know this, that fear is part of being human. It's part of the human condition. It's part of being alive. And really the question is that, are you going to walk through it? That's the question. The question you have to ask is, are you going to walk through it, or are you going to let it hinder you? There's no in between. There's no gray on fear. There's no gray, there's just this middle ground. I can be afraid and try. It's like, no, either like you understand that fear is part of the human condition and it makes you, it's part of being alive. And the two options you have, there's no gray. Either you're going to walk through it or you're going to let it hinder you. There's no in between. And I think a lot of us get stuck in the in between. We're the ones that say, well, I'm kind of, if I just try a little bit harder, but not really go all in, I'll go a little bit and let's see if it happens. And if I get too much rejection, then that means it's not really meant to be. The reality is fear is something that you have to literally walk through. And it's a book that Ken and I have read. Is like, the fact is, what fear really is, that's the obstacle. And the obstacle is the way. There's no way around fear. The only way with fear is through it. There's not around it. You can't skip it. You can't act like it's not there. It's the look it dead in the freaking eyes and be like, dude, this is a fear I have. I'm going to literally dedicate and walk through it. So just know that as I wanted to add to that. So Bobby, I'll toss it back to you, brother.
Thank you.
You're welcome, James.
I got on the call even though I said I can't. I was actually afraid of missing this call. That's a true statement. So I actually got on this call. I just thought this is ironic. I do have a migraine. I'm here fighting through it. But my biggest fear is fear of disappointment. And I don't mean disappointment in myself. I mean disappointing other people. I feel like, I try so hard to serve people and over deliver. And I'm just afraid, like growing up, I didn't have people give me affirmations, didn't have a lot of people tell me what I do good. Should I even wrote 2 books and nobody even said a word about it. It was almost expected of me because people expect me to do some good things in my life. But my biggest fear is one, dying unloved, even though I give a lot of love. And another 2 is disappointing others where I don't leave the legacy I thought I should have left and not following through on maintaining commitment. I'm kind of getting a little bit deep here, and I think it's important to get deep sometimes. Like I worry someday, like I'm going to wake up and I'm not going to have the same drive I have. And so I worry about disappointing others. And so that's kind of like my driving force to make sure I overcome that and fight through it. I'm gonna leave it with this, is that I'm very spiritual. I don't go to church every Sunday, but I'm very spiritual. And I believe that we have glass ceilings. All of us have limiting beliefs and glass ceilings. And I'm just going to leave it with this, is with fear. Sometimes you're scared to punch through the glass. And because you're afraid you're going to get cut, you're afraid you're going to have scars, you're afraid you're going to get bruised. But I would challenge everybody just to punch through the glass, because those scars and those bruises and that pain you go through are what's going to define who you are tomorrow.
Good. That's
my fear.
That's good. Somebody else, guys.
I'd love to speak in.
Go ahead, Sam. And then Rosie, we're going to come to you right after that, sweetheart.
Yeah. So for me, 10 months ago, my biggest fear was that I was going to leave this earth without changing the generational path of my family, the loss and the, the poverty that we've lived under and the pain that they've all lived under. And I just gotta, give grace where grace is due, that, the community has really spoken into me and lifted me up and given me the opportunity to not only find my voice after 12 years mute, but also step into the power of contribution, which is really coming into clarity for me this week, where, I'm able to speak into people, other people, and help them on their journey, and know that all the stripes I've earned along the way were gifted to me. And that's the way I'm phrasing it now. They were gifted to me to give me the strength to really speak into other people's lives and make sure that, you know, I am stepping up to the plate and I'm not living in a place of self-limiting capacity and belief. And, you know, I was just on a call with Grant and Elena for her 10X Ladies, and Grant spoke into the fact that so many people lean into a chameleon persona in order to think that their agility and their flexibility is a gift to them. And he actually said that that's one of the biggest hindrances you can have, because it is a defense mechanism. It is a persona that you place on yourself that limits, you know, your capacity, and you think that you're giving yourself, you know, grace or barrier, or, you know, this other thing, you're acceptable to all, and you're living and breathing into others. And he said it's not that. And I have to tend to agree. Like that chameleon, I used to identify with that chameleon persona, right? Like I was so agile, like I could just adapt to any environment and make it through. And I got to tell you, in the last 10 months, I've just had our community come up around me and show me that, you know, like I said, all these challenges have been gifted to me so that I have the strength to really get through this time. So, you know, just knowing that now I have the strength to really change that generational capacity of my family, the entire family, is going to come to fruition.
I love that, girl. I'm going to come back to you in just a minute, because I want to, as we walk through identifying, removing, and replacing, and some affirmations, I want to ask you some questions on that process for you. Rosa, go ahead, sweetheart.
Sorry, I was trying to mute. I just
No, you're good.
love what Samantha said, that I forgot what I was going to say for myself because I could identify so much. But if I could just say, there's two things that I feel are really almost holding me back, those fears. One of them is just on the surface level. I also want to do what James is doing, which is wholesaling as a way to be able to buy and hold properties. So my superficial level fear is that I'm going to make a huge mistake that is going to cost a lot of money to me and my family. And any advances that I've been able to make is going to put me back, like years back. Not like, oh, I made a little mistake, but I made a big mistake and now we're in deep financial problems because, you know, if you don't know your numbers, if you don't know how to pick your tenants, you could really get into trouble. So that's my superficial level fear. And then the other fear, and this is where I'm really trying to work on, because I feel like some of the root of this is to fail publicly, like for my coworkers, for my family, for the people who rely on me, you know, to see me go from, let's say, being okay to being below okay. I feel like that would be very hard. That if I were to suffer these failures in private, like nobody knows anything, maybe I could just handle it a little bit better. So it's like this deep rooted thing that I think Samantha might have touched a little bit, like this chameleon that I always want to, you know, I always want to be the one that could just overcome. And maybe I'm wondering if I can't at some point.
Yeah. Let me say this. Go ahead, Nate.
I just think, Rosa, girl, I'm there with you. Like, no matter where we're at in life, no matter our success, just know, like, I think we all face this reality is, you know, facing our fears is greater than the fear itself. Like, actually facing it is greater than the fear itself. And if we start to realize that the greatest fears we have in our life are the precipice of the greatest opportunities we have in our life. And just like, I appreciate your vulnerability. And that's part of this culture of Guru Stack Drive, is like, we can be vulnerable with our fears. We have a chance to lay down our sword, lay down our shield, and be like, dude, I'm not made of armor. I'm not made of freaking rock and steel. You know, like when I say I deal with migraines and I deal with these things, these are also a product of the stress and the fears I have in life of failing as a single father, failing as an entrepreneur, being able to pay my staff, be able to offer a great opportunity to be able to deliver for my clients. You know, these are all great fears. So just know, when you lay into that, Rosa, and you actually lean into it, I think a lot of times we always look at our fears and we miss the point of actually understanding where our fears come from. There is a root to everything. And I guarantee you, if I sat down with anyone, I said, tell me your greatest fear. And I asked you this question, where do you feel that fear came from? I promise you there is a genesis. And Ken said it early on. There's no fear in your life that's literally not been learned. It's been learned. It's been put upon you. You didn't ask for it. You didn't declare it. You didn't say, I'd like to have this fear. By the way, sign me up for this fear. How much is it for that fear? I'll pay this much for that fear. I'd like to have that fear. Literally, it's been put upon you. It was learned upon you. It was forced upon you. So when you grab the root of it and you actually are able to actually wrestle with understanding where that fear came from, I promise you that is the actual great equalizer to overcoming your fear and actually making it not only the greatest challenge in your life, but also the greatest opportunity for you to actually fulfill your full potential.
I love that. I love that. And guys, so one of the things we're going to talk about over the next 7 to 8 weeks as we walk through this GROW course and we identify 6 limiting belief systems is we're going to talk about identifying, removing, and replacing. Okay. Identifying, removing, and replacing. And so really tonight, I wanted us to take some time when we talk specifically about fear. I wanted us to talk about, and really when you get into fear, because it is the number one thing, and there's different types of fears or different things that we're afraid of. But like when you talk about something really you see and hear the emotion in Rosa's voice and even in Sam's voice and even with James, you hear you can hear the pain on the inside of them and I love what Nate said. We've heard this for a while in church circles. This fear is false evidence appearing real. It's like we're believing this thing. And here's the definition of fear. It's an unpleasant emotion caused by the belief that something or someone is dangerous and likely to cause pain or be a threat. Or to be afraid of something or someone as likely to be dangerous, painful, or threatening. You know why we don't lose weight or we don't get in shape? Because it's freaking painful for most of us. Like it's painful. Like the gym can be uncomfortable. Running and exercising can be uncomfortable. Not eating what I want to eat, if that's how I medicate, can physically be painful for me. So identifying, removing, and replacing. So here's one thing I want you to do between now and within the next day or 2 days. This is going to be a little bit of homework. I'm going to throw this in now because this is where we're at. I want you to write down that one thing for you. Like, this is my fear. This is my fear. I want you to write that down sometime in the next 24 hours on the GSD Facebook page. Here's my fear. I have identified this fear. I know exactly what it is. Rosa, for you, it's obviously very similar. And a lot of these are going to be similar, guys. It's a fear of letting people down. And I think even for you, Rosa, it's a fear of poverty or losing what you've worked so hard to do instead of, and again, you've heard me talk about being at the mastermind with Grant. Literally, when I pulled the trigger to do this, I can't tell you how many times Nate and I have had the conversation. Christian and I had the conversation today. Dude, man, this is a huge risk. Like, whoo, like I like 6 figures in my bank account, which it used to be. Now there's about a quarter of that in my bank account because I spent all this money and this time and this effort trying to pull this thing off. So that fear is real. So I want you to identify that fear, and then we're going to remove that fear. And how we remove that fear and what we remove that fear with is courage. So we've identified, now we're going to remove that fear and we're going to replace it with something else, which is going to be courage. Does somebody know what courage really means? What does it mean when we have courage?
I think I know, Ken. I mean, I know a rough version of the definition is that you can be scared, you can be fearful, but you still act on it. So by acting on it, it's almost a heroic action. Yes, people call you a hero, but you're really showing courage. When you go into a fire, you're kind of putting your fear aside of dying and maybe going to save somebody. So you're showing an act of courage. That's what I would say a kind of a generic version of courage is.
Love it.
Can I pull a grant here and share the definition? Just looked it up.
Go ahead. Yep, go ahead.
The ability to do something that frightens one or the strength in the face of pain or grief, which pain, like you said, that was like in grief that struck.
Which is a definition of fear.
Well,
Have
no,
y'all seen,
another-
go ahead, Nate.
No, I was just saying another way. It's one of my favorite quotes. I think it's by Franklin Roosevelt. Fear is not the absence of courage, but the actual the understanding that there's something more important than the fear. And I'm butchering this, but that's it.
But
Courage
no,
is not the absence of fear. It's actually the presence and the understanding that there's something greater than the fear. That's what courage really is.
So has anybody seen the commercial? It's the Marine commercial. It's a newer one, like in the last couple of years. And you see, it's like Middle Eastern. There's a firefight and everybody's running away. And they talk about Marines. We don't run away. We run to it. So here's what I want us to do this week over the next several days. For those of you guys that have got access to the GSD code, which is pretty much everybody on here, in your workbook, there are daily affirmations. So we're going to identify, which I think we have. And I'd love to hear from a couple more people. We've got about 10 or 15 minutes. I'd love to hear from a couple more people like, hey, Ken, this is the fear I struggle with. David Ridenour, I'd love to hear from you. I want to know what that is from you. Jay Diedrich, I want to hear from at least the two of you guys, okay? Joe Sarkis, you're going to go third. It doesn't have to just be quick and say, this is my biggest fear. We have identified the biggest fear. We said, hey, we're going to remove that because we know falling and loud noises are the only two fears we're born with. Everything else is learned. So how do we do it? And you just read the definition of courage. Really, Bobby gave us a breakdown of the definition of courage. And Nate gave us a great quote from one of the best presidents we've ever had in one of the most difficult times we've ever had during World War II in Pearl Harbor. And here's what I want you to do. I want you to be like those Marines in that. I want you to run after it. I literally want you to attack whatever it is you are afraid of. I want you to go after it with everything you have. You know that's the thing that you're afraid of. What we're going to do tomorrow is we're going to get up and go, hey, this is what I'm afraid of. This is what I'm going to do about it. This is what I'm afraid of, and this is what I'm going to do about it. We're going to identify, remove, and replace. And we're going to replace fear with courage. We literally are going to attack the very thing that is standing in our way. David Ridenour, I'd love to hear what your fear is, man.
My fear has always been getting in front of people and trying to remember what people are saying.
Yeah. So for me, calling on you is a fear for you.
Yeah. Well, that plus trying to remember everything that I'm learning on top of it, that's, I've had some public speaking, but I've came a long way from that, but I'm still in that basic.
I got you. I'm going to give you an idea. I'm going to give you an idea to attack your fear. Okay. So for tomorrow, instead of you just posting a post, I want you to shoot a video and put it on the page. Here's my fear, and here's what I'm doing to conquer it. I'm going after it. I'm going to freak. I don't know if you guys saw my video the other day when I was on the bike at the gym. Like, I think it was yesterday. Dude, I was like a little pissed off. I'm like, freaking somebody do something today. Like, freaking go after it. Stop letting yourself settle for average. Like, let's freaking do something amazing. And I know Nate's heart. I know Nate, and we've been friends for 20 years. There is nothing that makes I will rest well tonight just by sitting here replaying some of the stories that I've heard tonight. Because I know that we are making and are able to make a tremendous difference by having these types of conversations. Melissa, Sam, I will never forget me being at the dry cleaner on a Saturday and pulling over into a parking spot and spending about 40 minutes on the phone with her one Saturday. This was like back in December or January of last, a long time ago. And now I look at her, I'm like, crap, that woman's changed. And guess what? I had the opportunity to help play a part in that. Guys, listen, attack your fear. What does it look like for you to freaking go after it and go, you know what? You're not going to dominate my life anymore. And here's what's going to happen. You're going to attack the big one, and then there's going to be some smaller ones that come out. But what we're learning how to do is identify, remove, and replace. And what happens is the more we do this and the more we exercise this in our life, if it can be learned, it can be what? Can be unlearned. Show of hands, everybody got it. Hey, I get you. It can be unlearned. So, David, Jay, talk to me about your fear.
I guess one of my biggest fears, if not the biggest, would be, like you just said, being average. Feel like the guys I kind of grew up with were kind of ahead of our age group already, in terms of being successful, which I know there's many different forms of success and titles of success, but yeah, I really just want to be above average. And I think you and I talk about it a lot. I have a lot of potential, but I just really need to figure out how to unlock it. You know, I know I have potential in myself, but I feel like what's holding me back is making the jump when I get to the end of the road. You know,
let me say this to speak to what Jay's talking about right now. Fears work very similar to judgments. So judgments is a scriptural word that we talk about a lot. And what happens when we have a fear or a judgment about ourselves? What happens is we generally act in such a way to bring that thing to pass. So like with Jay, he's got a fear that he's going to be average. So when we give into that fear, what happens? We turn out to be average.
Yeah.
When we have a fear to speak in public, what do? We don't ever speak in public. Like we literally yield to that thing that makes us or helps us become the very thing we're afraid of. Does that make sense? Go ahead, Jay, finish your thought.
I mean, that was pretty much the gist of it. But yeah, I think doing these calls and, you know, being around this sort of community, it really helps boost my mindset towards things. I don't know, it's motivating. So
good.
Thank you, everybody.
Joe Sarkis, talk to me, man.
It's a tie. I got two. One is fear, it's rejection. The other one is failing. So you could probably put them together.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like the rejection and failing, kind of like a combo. So those are the two that I think that I struggle with on that aspect, with that. And, you know, for me to overcome the rejection part is not care, right? And just don't even care what anybody thinks anymore. And that mindset. And then the failing part, you gotta expect to fail, right? I mean, that's
Mm-hmm.
only part you're gonna learn. Don't like failing, but it's just one of those things where I don't know. I get nervous about failing in front of people, you know, because it builds a perception on you, right? And that's kind of why I get a little nervous on that aspect. So those are the two main things too, you know.
I love there's a quote in John Maxwell's book, Failing Forward, phenomenal book, and I know Nate's read it. And Phil's probably read it too. But in Failing Forward, John Maxwell says, if you're not failing, you're probably not really moving forward. If you're not failing, you're probably not really moving forward. Guys, listen, when you learn how to ride a bike, dude, skinned knees, skinned elbows, busted lips, busted head. I mean, those things were just part of the process, right? Listen, attacking a limited belief system like fear, because Joe, how old are you?
44.
44 years old. I guarantee you, and Nate talked about it. Nate, talk about the genesis of a fear and probably where that's come from in Joe's life and how long it's been there.
No, I mean, I you know what pisses me off most with not people, but it's like, and Joe, this is not, let everybody hear this statement. Until I became a student of fear and a student of shame, I didn't even begin my journey to overcome those things. Like there's two ways there's a spiritual aspect to it. We want to be motivated and inspired. We want to be encouraged. We're a fast food generation. We want like, hey, I have a fear. I want a result now. Tell me the quote, tell me the affirmation, tell me what I got to do. But I can tell you this, until you become a student of fear and understand that neurologically, fear is literally your brain's response telling you that there's something important in your life that you have to overcome. That's really the goodness of fear. It is your neurological, your brain's response to say, hey, there's something in your life you have to overcome. But we dismiss it, and what we're looking for is that quote. We're looking for that quick fix to say, I have a fear, I want to change it. But what we don't want to do is get messy. We don't want to put our face in a pillow at night and cry our eyes out by ourselves. Cry out to whatever God you believe in. Cry out to whatever you can. Get a friend on the phone. Be vulnerable and say, this is my fear. We don't want to do that hard work. We want the damn thing that says, no, I am good, I got a fear. But by the way, reality is, for all of us that have real fears like me, and by the way, you all might consider me brilliant as a genius, and I get that, but I'm not saying that to tout my own thing. There's my clients on this phone, literally. Ken's a client. Bobby Grice, they pay me thousands of dollars a month to run their businesses. Thousands. I'm not talking $100, thousands of dollars a month. And these men know with me, though, it's like, dude, fear is crippling. At its very fucking root, its design is to cripple your mind. It's to cripple you to inaction. It's to cripple you to feel you have no self-worth. It's to cripple you to ensure that you do not succeed or find significance in life. So whether you believe spiritually or not, just know there's freaking forces at work in your mind, neurologically, based on what you learned, how you grew up, that your mom, your dad beat your ass when you were a kid, you suffered, you went through a divorce, you were abused, all these things feed into these fears. And the reality is, your brain literally, when you literally understand. So my encouragement on this whole topic is this: the genesis has to be when you identify a fear, don't say, oh, my fear is like, I don't want to, I'm just scared to chase after my dreams. I don't know what. Okay, get it. What's the root of it? Why the hell, why the hell is it there? Do a Google search. There's Cambridge studies on fear. Like literally neurologically, whether you're spiritual or not, there's literally studies out there that say, this is how your brain fires based on fear. And there's literally studies that says, these are the actions you can take that are proven scientifically, not just spiritually, that you can engage and remove that fear and replace it with something else. The problem is fear is always passed over as because it's our own insecurity. It's our own inability to address our own humanity. Let me say that again. Fear is our own inability to address our own humanity, to say that we are not bulletproof. We are broken. We can be broken. But here's the beauty of the human nature and the condition. Whatever we've learned, we can unlearn and we can fix it. But you cannot listen. The beauty of what Growth Stack Drive is about is we are dealing with shit that nobody deals with. But it is the crux and it's the foundation of all things that are literally ruining the freaking human condition as we know it today. We're all crippled by fear. Whatever you lean on COVID, what you see about it, what you think about it, it's ravaged our nation with fear. Black Lives Matter, racism, we're all crippled with fear. Whatever you say, can I say it? Can I not say it? Can I do it? I'm scared to say it. Should I say it? Should I not say it? Should I tell my friend about it? Should I not tell my friend about it? Should I call my African-American friend? Should I call this person? Should I not? We're all crippled by fear. So you have to dig out the root. If you have a weed in your front yard, we all got lawns. You have a weed in your front yard, when you just go do the one thing, you just kind of pluck the top thing off, right? Oh, it looks better from, guess what that damn thing didn't do? 2 weeks later, that thing grew up even faster.
Right. The roots are still there.
You got to get it. So you have to get to the genesis of your fear. And the only way you do that is by really understanding your fear, getting after it. What's the genesis of it? The pain of it. And why people don't go to the genesis? Because the genesis of most fears are rooted in deep fucking pain.
But it will set you free.
Yes, but it's deep pain.
Yeah.
Most of your fears come from deep pain. The inadequacy of a father in your life, the death of a brother or a sister, the death of a loved one, the loss of a marriage. Most of your fears are deep bedded in deep pain, and nobody wants to deal with deep pain. Nobody does, because it's brutal freaking work. But identify it and get to the root of it, then you can actually literally remove it and replace it with something positive. And by the way, I say this from a guy that's on this journey still, deeply.
My buddy Edward Bailey, if you guys saw the virtual summit last month, my buddy Edward Bailey actually talked about this. He put a post on his Instagram this week. He said the road to freedom is paved with pain. Like here's the truth about fear is it takes courage to overcome it. You've got to be willing to step outside your comfort zone. This isn't easy. Nate just said this isn't an easy work, but fear can and should be used as fuel. It should be something that literally is like right now. You should be like, dang, I need to attack this. But I promise you guys, when we talk about identify, remove, and replacing limited belief system, when we talk about specific, when we get down to brass tacks and we're talking about some of the issues that we're talking about right now, I'm telling you what happens is the more you say, you know what, I'm not gonna, what Popeye say? I can't stand it no more or something like that. Like we ain't putting up with this anymore. Like I am going to attack this thing that has dominated my life. So what do, Rosa? We've got a fear about the home and about those kind of things. You know what? Now use wisdom. You're going to want to surround yourself with people who can help make sure that what you do is successful. You want to attack the fear? Go do it. Go buy you an investment property and make some money and put a renter in it, or a flip, or whatever it is for Rosa and for James. You guys want to do wholesale flip? Go find you a property. Get out there and do it. I said this to a friend of mine last week. When I play poker, I've played high levels of poker, been on TV, on ESPN, played in the WSOP, the whole 9 yards. When I play poker, I usually my buy-ins from $2,500 to 10 grand every time I sit at a table, 10, 20, no limit. And I play thousands and thousands of dollars. Well, when you take somebody who hasn't played, like if I go to a 1-2 table and buy it for $200, I'm like, this not even fun to me anymore. So if I sit down with somebody and I put them in a blackjack game where I'm playing $50 to $200 a hand, and they're not used to playing, or poker, they're not used to playing on a buy-in over $2,500, it's hard for them to function because they're afraid. Like they're afraid. They look at it, and this is what psychologists say about poker players and about people who play blackjack or poker is, you get to a point to where you play at higher and higher and higher levels, to where if it's a black chip, which is 100, if y'all know, if it's a purple chip, it's a 500, and if it's orange, it's $1,000 chip. You know that those are just increments. It's not money. You understand that is just an increment, and it's part of playing at a bigger game. But you have to get used to playing at that level, and you play at that level, and you succeed, and you gain confidence. You go up to the next level. It is the exact same thing. Fear works the exact same way. So, Sam, I'd love to ask you. We've got a couple minutes, but Sam, I'd love to ask you, as we talk about identify, removing, and replacing fear with courage and attacking. Give me a couple areas in your life over the past 10 months where you've really taken action on that. And obviously how's that worked for you?
I think the biggest areas I've been deliberate in what I'm doing is the identifying the choices I've made that led me to today. I think that's really like the biggest area of focus that I've had is taking responsibility, right? For the things and the patterns that I allowed into my life, and taking ownership of the fact that I allowed them, I brought them in, I attracted them. And that goes for situations and people, right? What relationships was I attracting into my life? I was attracting the ones where they didn't want to get deep, and they didn't want to have anything more than a superficial exchange, because I wasn't ready to break down the walls and actually share myself with other people. And so I've really, in the last 7-10 months, been looking at the fact that I was attracting people who would give me 10% of themselves because I was giving 10% of myself to the world. I wasn't stepping into, I actually am a person of contribution. I wasn't saying that I'm a person who can give to others. I said, I'm selfishly going to just live and be of myself. And I did that for 12 years. And in the last 10 months, I've really been looking at the fact that, okay, I got to take responsibility for some stuff that I allowed in. You know, my accidents were bad. My health was bad, but it's not as bad as others can go through. It's not the worst thing on the planet. It's not the hardest challenges you could face. But I was allowing them to be so massive and take so much power and weight in my life that I absolutely allowed those diminishing factors to sit on my heart, to sit on my contribution, and to limit who I was and how I was showing up to the world. I thought, you know, if I put resting bitch face on and I tell people that I'm mute and I tell people that I don't want to talk to them, then they'll leave me be and I'll be allowed to just be myself. And in the last 10 months, I have discovered that I actually like people. I actually like learning what other people are coming through and coming over, right? Like I'm learning that I actually want to engage. I don't want to be someone who's a chameleon, who can drift into nothing, who can say, you know, I'm just going to sit silently and listen to the certainty in my voice. My God, I did not have that a year ago. I wasn't able to even carry on for 30 seconds a year ago. And now I can, and now it's just, you know, the more people I share my story with, share my voice with, share my passion with, they're like, Sam, how did you manage to, you know, be 12 years silent? And for me, that's what I'm still breaking through, breaking down, unraveling, unwrapping, pulling back the layers.
And every level, it's like an onion. Every level and every layer she peels back, guys. Listen to this. You're going to see more and more of the true person that she is come forward. And I've never heard Sam say what she said just a minute ago about being a contribution. Like, I'm a contribution. Like part of her tackling her fear was for her to get to the point to where and start to gain momentum in the belief in herself that I am a contribution. Are you freaking kidding me, man? The more she does that, I can't even wait to see where you're at in the next year. It's going to be unbelievable to see where you're at in the next year. It's absolutely going to be unbelievable.
Hey,
so here's what I want to do. Yeah, go ahead, bud.
Can I share an analogy? I think we'll kind of tie a bow.
Yep.
Let me put it this way. Why I think the grow part of what we're doing, the limiting belief systems are so important, is because not a lot of people teach on it. They kind of just brush it over like, hey, you got fear, get motivated, get over it, set some goals, take some action. I get all these things. But let me picture the person you love the most in the world. Love the most in the world. Was tied up in a room in so much bondage, like tied up, locked door. You didn't know where they're at. You didn't know how to find them, but you knew that they were in deep turmoil. What would you not do to ensure that person is freed? Can we raise our hand? What would you not do? Is there limitations? Your kids, your wife, your spouse, there's nothing you would not do. That's how relentless you have to pursue your own fear, because what fear puts you in is in bondage. It ties your wrist, it ties your mind, it ties your hands. And we have to relentlessly pursue the fact of it. And by the way, think of it the same way. If you knew someone is in some place, you do all the research. Where were they last seen? How did that happen? Did they get taken? All the things. You do all the research to uncover where that person was at. Pursue your fear the same way. Where the hell did it come from? Who put me in this bondage? How did I get here? How do I unlock it? What do I got to do to ensure I find where this fear is and tackle it? And you have to relentlessly pursue that fear the same way, because there's nothing. By the way, if you don't have the same relentless pursuit of that fear, because I promise you, if I had one-on-ones with all of you right now, there's two things that are binding you. It's your own fear. It's your own shame. Mm-hmm. Those are your limiting things that are kicking your ass. And if you don't relentlessly pursue demolishing those things in your life, and guys, I'm speaking from pain right now, not like knowledge, not like I got to figure it out. I'm relentlessly for the last 3 years of my life and pursuing to free myself from all these chains that I was bound up in, that I never asked to be bound up in. Never asked to be bound up in them. But
here's what I want you guys to do, and I'm gonna close it out with this and that. Two things. Here's your homework for this week. Number one, all of you guys that are on the GSD code and you've got access to our Kajabi stuff, you've got a workbook. My man James Rich got his printed out over there. He's looking all nice and slick with his spiral bound 10X workbook. One of the things that we ask you guys to do throughout this course, especially when we talk about, well, this course specifically on identifying, removing, and replacing a limited belief system, is we have daily affirmations. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm actually going to do this. Let me put this right here. Boom. I'm going to put it right there. So these are, I'm going to give you guys these right here. Those are, that's actually a daily affirmation. That's actually a quote from John Maxwell, and it's another daily affirmation. So we gave you 5 daily affirmations for each course. So in this course, there's 5. We've asked you in this course to write 7 of your own daily affirmations. Okay. So here's 2 of the affirmations that we gave you. I will fail and embrace failure as long as I have learned something. I will fail and embrace failure as long as I have learned something. And I love that word embrace. When we did these affirmations, like, listen, I'm okay failing as long as I learn something. And the second part of this affirmation, the second one of the 5 we gave you is, I am afraid not to do it. So if you watch the video part, if you've already watched this section of the videos, I actually walk you through these 5 affirmations that literally every day I want you to speak these out loud. So here's your homework. You've got 2 things. Number 1, on the GSD Facebook page, I want you to list your number 1 fear. Your number 1 fear. And with that number 1 fear, I want you to write down your own personal daily affirmation to begin to deal with that fear. What does it look like? Rosa, for example, I will not be afraid to go into, the investment property or the house flipping or whatever that looks like. I refuse to let fear stop me from doing what I want to do. It's not going to happen. So whatever that looks like, Joe Sarkis, I refuse to let my fear of judgment or criticism of others stop me from being everything that my life is supposed to be. You come up with your own affirmation specifically geared towards that number 1 fear you have. And then part of your homework this week on the Kajabi side, on the online course side, is this. Part of your homework is, as you walk through that and you start identifying some of those fears that you have, I want you to take and write a daily affirmation for each, probably top 2 or 3 fears that you have, because all of us have more than one. And I like what Joe said just a minute ago, that fear of judgment, and then the fear, what was the 2 you had, Joe, just a minute ago?
It was rejection and failing.
Rejection. So, and those are a lot. They're similar. They're very, very similar. Rejection says, if people really knew me, they wouldn't like me. If they really knew what I thought, they wouldn't like me. If they really knew what I did in the past, they really wouldn't like me. Listen, and I understand where people say you've got to live where you don't care what other people say. What you've got to do is you've got to live where you care what the right people say. Well, you've got to learn to care what the right people say. Everybody else is white noise in my life. I care about what the right people say to me. Because if the right people say, hey, Ken, you're off right here, I better listen. If the right people come to me and say, hey, Ken, I see this, can we talk? Then I need to listen. Does that make sense? So that's your homework. 2 things. Write down your number 1 fear. Second thing is, I want one of the 7 daily affirmations that you're going to write down. I want you to write that down and post that as well. Any questions, thoughts, or comments, guys, before we hop off of here tonight?
Hey, Ken, it's Phil. Couple thoughts.
Go ahead, buddy.
Hey, yep. Man. So one thing I want to share with everybody in my notes that I wrote was that we heard the term learned fear. And one thing that I've done in my stuff is fear is always a result of pain. And that pain is either physical or emotional, mental. And so as Nate said, you got to go down to the root. And I always say you play the why game. And when you answer the why, you got to turn right back around and ask why to your answer and keep going and keep going. And you'll find it'll usually come down to 1 or 2 core things. And the real secret for me has always been to share with people, really ask yourself this question: what is stopping yourself from self-love? Ask yourself that. What is stopping or hindering yourself from 100% self-love? And a lot of times that'll help get to that root why.
I love that, man.
Love it, bro.
So good. Guys, any other questions? We're good? You guys are amazing.
Can next week come sooner than next week?
No, because I'm going to be going to umpire camp. I leave flight in the morning at 8 a.m. And I'm going to be
nice.
calling in balls and strikes, baby.
I Identify, remove, replace.
Yes.
Identify. Know what it is. If it's rejection, and it's the reality is to remove it and say, hey, I'm afraid of being accepted for who I really am. You got to say that, okay, I got to remove that. But you can't just remove it and say, oh, you have to replace this. No, I'm accepted just as I am.
Yes.
I am powerful just as I am. I'm an amazing person as God has created me. You can't just remove. You have to think of it like as a hole in the ground. You dig a hole and you dig the hole like, oh, I removed it. And you don't replace it with the right thing. Guess what's going to happen? Whatever is going to happen, next thing is going to fill that fear void. So that's the power 5, identifying, removing, replacing. It's neurological, it's psychological, it's spiritual. You have to literally identify it, you have to remove it, then you have to replace it. That's the power of affirmations.
You make one good point though, with the fear of failing. It's like, ooh, you're gonna get in trouble. Like that's what you have embedded in your whole life, failing in everything. Oh my God, you're gonna get in trouble by your boss, by your spouse, all that stuff. And that's how the fear builds up on that aspect.
But you get OG, bro. I raise my kids OG. I tell my kids
get OG.
I tell my kids this all the time. You are King Kong. My kids, go to my Instagram right now. You look at all my kids post for their birthdays, all of them. I tell them that you're lions. Sheep get eaten.
Yeah.
I said, it's a tough rule. It's going to take from you more than it'll give you. You have to go get yours. What I'm doing is telling them, like, hey, the world's going to tell you that you have to be a sheeple and not stand up for your belief. Right. I'm telling them, no, I'm removing that belief and saying, no, you're a freaking lion. You're a May. You are meant to stand up for what you believe. You're meant to defend the weak. You're meant to stand up for those that can't stand up for themselves. That's the process. So the same thing with the fear of failure, Joseph, is like, dude, screw failure. That boss that thinks I'm a failure, literally, you have to get OG a little bit. Like, hey, fuck that guy. Like, you know what, dude? You don't believe in me? I'm going to remove, you ain't got no thought on my mind. I'm going to show you what I'm about, not because I'm trying to prove something to you, because I'm going to prove it to me and it's going to show you under. So there's sometimes you got to get grit. There's this grit to it too, guys. It isn't like some soft hug you, oh, let's cry a little bit. I get all those things. Trust me, I get it. There's sometimes, man, you just got to be like, fuck you. Come at me one more time, dude. I'm a lion. You're a sheep. I'm going to eat you in 10 days. You keep thinking that you're the lion and I'm the sheep, but let me show you, I'm a lion. You're going to get eaten. I'm just saying there's got to be a little grit to it too.
Hey, Joe, don't look at your boss tomorrow and say F you. Okay?
No, don't.
That's not what we're telling
well,
you.
He's on, guys, by the way, just want to let you guys know, he's on the call.
There's times there's got to be grit, man. It's a dangerous.
Oh, it's Phil. That's right. It's Phil. My bad.
It has nothing to do with Phil. It goes deeper in that anyway. It's just a bad thing. You grow up on that aspect. So,
yeah.
All right. I was passionate tonight. I apologize.
No, you're good, man. Like you're good.
But guess what? I don't apologize. So.
I'm sorry, not sorry.
Sorry.
Hey guys, listen.
Hey,
remove guys.
Remove your replace.
Love you guys. Identify, remove, and replace. Homework. 2 things on the GSD Facebook page: biggest fear and an affirmation you're going to use to combat that. Love you guys. I will see you guys. I'll be back live next Tuesday. I think I've got a podcast next Tuesday, and then we'll see you guys next Wednesday. We'll see you out throughout this week. Tomorrow is day 7 of the 30-day challenge. Your goals, your quote, and all the things we just talked about just a minute ago. Love you guys. Enjoy your evening.